What is going on, everybody? Welcome to this Monday edition of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast. I am your host for this episode, the Young Buck, Andy York. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us each and every episode. We really appreciate it. Make sure you go and follow us on all social media. You can follow the podcast at PBW Podcast on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy_PBWP. Make sure you go over there and subscribe because you can catch all of my reactions to all of the psychotic news that broke over the last couple of days that have broken my mind in many ways, which I'm sure Wednesday's episode will cover all of it and talk about all of it. But today we are going to be talking about the Royal Rumble in a different light, in a different way. We're going to be talking about Mick Foley and his incredible runs through the Rumble from 97 to 2000. So we're going to dive in and talk about all of that, but there's no way I could do this alone. Joining me, as always, is the actual host of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, Mr. Chris Belcher. Chris, how you doing, man?
Well, man, listen, you're as much of a host as I am, just because I originated the thing and I am the phenomenal host.
There you go. The OG host is what I'll start calling you.
There you go. The OG host. I like to throw you a bone every now and then. Man, I'm good. It's cold in the Nashville area. Holy cow.
It is. My wife is from Buffalo, New York, and yesterday, obviously, we got snow. Not like her mom called and was like, yeah, we got like 2 feet of snow in like an hour. It's like snowing 2 feet every hour or something like that. And I'm like, oh, we got 5 inches and everything is shut down here.
Right.
But she says it's today and yesterday felt a lot more like at home than, 2 days ago when it was like 70 degrees or something like that. But, that's Nashville, Tennessee for you. The weather is very unpredictable and always fun to figure out.
I saw a meme online that said something to the effect of Southerners, prepare yourself for the apocalypse. Northerners, just bring your heavy coat.
Yeah. That's basically
that's what it is.
Because, like, what was it? Saturday? New Year's Day, we had tornadoes.
Yeah.
2 days later, it was sleeting on Sunday, and then Monday it snowed. Yesterday it snowed. So it's whatever. It's you get used to it after a while. You just kind of walk outside and figure out, oh, it's 30 degrees, but it'll be 90 degrees at noon today. So just go prepared for both. So,
oh my goodness, welcome to the weirdness that is the weather in Nashville, Tennessee.
You gotta love it. All right, man. Let's jump into talk about the Rumble. We are in the Royal Rumble season. My personal favorite time in WWE is the Rumble. And so we're going to be looking at Mick Foley. Like I said, we're going to be covering from 1997 to 2000, where he had this crazy kind of run at each 4 shows. The poor guy died at 2 of them, basically, and then, wrestled for I don't remember how many minutes in 1998, and then obviously his first ever Rumble in 1997. And that's where we're going to kind of start things out, is at his first Royal Rumble in 1997. Not to brag or anything, but I'm pretty sure I was a month old when this happened.
My God.
So it depends on when the Rumble was, because I know it's not always at the end. It wasn't always at the end of January. So if it was like early January, middle January, I wasn't even a month old yet. So yeah,
I remember watching it when it happened. Like, I vividly remember watching this. In fact, going back and watching all these shows, man, so many good memories flooded back for me watching all of these Rumbles, because I watched all of Foley's stuff at all 4 Rumbles, but I also watched some other things. So for like 97, I watched the whole Rumble, and then I watched Shawn and Sid in the title match. And then 98, it was difficult to watch, but I watched the Shawn Taker casket match. That's, of course, where he breaks his back. So just a lot of good stuff on all these Royal Rumbles.
Yeah, I went back because the 1997 Rumble is the GIF I use all the time with Stone Cold in the corner with the watch and listening to it and everything else. I use it all the time. So I go back and watch that one, and that's the first time I remember watching Fake Razor, and it was the dumbest thing I've seen in a long. Like, it was one of the dumbest things I've seen in a while. But it was man. I get why he did it. I understand like the logic behind it, sort of, but it was. It's definitely the Dollar General version of Razor Ramon. And so,
well, Mr. Young Buck, have you ever watched one of his promos? One of Fake Razor's promos?
I have not.
Oh, as soon as we finish recording, Look it up because he tries to fake the Cuban Razor accent.
Oh no! Oh no!
It's so funny.
Because like I've seen Fake Diesel. Because Fake Diesel was
Kane.
Glenn Jacobs, right?
Yep, Kane.
Yep. So
exactly
I
right.
you know, I can at least get behind that somewhat because obviously of who Kane or who he became really.
Yep.
But Fake Razor is just
well, Rick Bogner, who was Fake Razor, he actually took that gimmick over to Japan and was Fake Razor in Japan after WWE let him go.
Run with it.
Yeah,
Run with it. Sure,
right?
why not? I mean, people probably I would have booked him during that time period. I got Fake Razor, and sure, why not?
Sure, absolutely.
So the 1997 Royal Rumble, though, is the first Rumble with Mick Foley. We kind of talked about this beforehand, but it was basically right after his debut, a couple months after his debut. He debuted
the night after WrestleMania 12 in '96.
Okay, so he'd been in the company for a couple months, but this was obviously the Rumble is the second biggest pay-per-view in WWE.
Sure.
And so this was obviously kind of his first moment to shine. Kind of what are your thoughts? What do you remember about the 1997 Rumble was specifically with Mick Foley? And, kind of laying the foundation to become the most unlikely WWE champion maybe of all time. I say that maybe because Jinder Mahal was WWE champion as well. So, that's what that is. But
that's true.
Definitely during that time period, the most unlikely champion in the WWF. What were your thoughts about this Rumble, him in the Rumble, and kind of his debut as a whole? We'll kind of lump all of that together.
Yeah, so man, Foley and a lot of people have gone on record, especially Jim Ross has gone on record, and he has said that he negotiated big time to bring Mick Foley into the WWF, and Vince was against it. And Vince told JR, he said, all right, I'm bringing him in, but it's on you. Don't be surprised when he breaks your heart. So that was the narrative going into Mick Foley debuting. And then, of course, Foley comes in and he's wearing all brown. And Foley has said, that's really what you want to wear as a wrestler is all brown. It's really going to stand out. But Foley made a huge name for himself, man. He came in immediately, attacked The Undertaker the night after WrestleMania, feuded with The Undertaker pretty much his whole career, but the feud nonstop went from the night after WrestleMania all the way through the Survivor Series match in '96. So they feuded from March until November. They had Buried Alive match. They had a Boiler Room Brawl at SummerSlam. And then that Survivor Series '96 match, like I mentioned. But Foley really did some stuff to put himself on the map. And then you fast forward to the Royal Rumble. One of the things that just came to me, there wasn't really anything notable about Foley in the Rumble other than this was the first encounter in the WWF, if I'm not mistaken, that he had with Terry Funk. Now, you're going to see in the '98 Rumble, those two guys start the Rumble off, and we'll get to that in a minute. But just the history that they had, because, the death matches in Japan and ECW and yada, 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 this was their first encounter in the WWF. So Foley really doesn't stick out to me from the Rumble of '97, but it's obviously something we want to talk about because, like you said, Rumble is one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year. This was his first appearance there. So obviously it means something. Now, if I'm talking about 1997, obviously I'm a big Shawn Michaels mark. So him winning the world title back in his hometown in the Alamo Dome, that's obviously what I remember this show for. But this show's not about Shawn Michaels. It can be if you want me to make it, but it's not about Shawn Michaels.
Well, this is also, I believe it's 97, where it's also laying the foundation for Bret Hart versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania 13, which is a lot of, top 5 WrestleMania matches of all time. The double turn, the Stone Cold bleeding like crazy, and the sharpshooter and passing out. So this is kind of like what's really cool about the 1997 Rumble, kind of from obviously the young guy going back and looking at it and able to look at it, in full perspective of everything. This is starting to lay the foundation of Stone Cold. This is starting to lay the foundation of Mick Foley. Well, obviously we're coming to an end, unfortunately, of Shawn Michaels during this time period. But you're kind of starting to see everything kind of roll through and change, which kind of leads us into the '98 Rumble. because this is when The Rock definitely was the Iron Man of the 1998 Rumble.
Yep.
He came out at number
three
and stayed.
Four.
Yeah, he was 4, and he stayed until he was the last one. When it was him and Austin. Him and Austin. Yep. So that kind of ran down. Which the final 4 of this one of '98 was Austin, Rock,
Farouk,
and Mankind. Or Dude Love.
It was Dude Love. Yep.
Because this is the Rumble where Mick Foley came out as all 3 faces of Foley. Starting off the Rumble number 1 with Cactus Jack coming out. And then, like you said, him and Terry Funk were the first 2 into this match. Obviously, this never been done before. 3 faces of Foley, anything like that in the Rumble.
Yep.
To my knowledge, has not been done since.
No, he only did it once.
Which you kind of could have done it this year, probably with Bray Wyatt and The Fiend, or last year. You could have done it something like that, but this is the only time that this has ever really been done in the Rumble. Right. Obviously, a great way to make history if you're Mick Foley. Obviously, a great way to kind of start things off as well. What do you kind of remember about the 98 Rumble and about the 3 faces of Foley?
Well, I'll tell you what, the 3 faces of Foley, like you said, it's the only time it's ever happened. And it's what I remember this Rumble for. Like, honestly, put a gun to my head and ask me, what's the one thing you take out of the 98 Royal Rumble other than Shawn Michaels' back injury? It's the 3 faces of Foley. I'm not a huge Austin mark, so this was his second Rumble win. So his rise to stardom, like you just mentioned. But that's not what I take away. 3 faces of Foley, and was one of the reasons I was excited to do this podcast. Is it's so unique. This is incredible creative right here to be able to use all 3 faces of Foley throughout the Royal Rumble and to have them all make an impact. Cactus Jack started the match off, and he went to war with Terry Funk as Chainsaw Charlie. Those 2 guys were tag partners, and they would go on to have a singles match. I think maybe the night after this Rumble, maybe it was like a week or so after, they had a singles hardcore match on Raw, and they got trapped in the dumpster by the New Age Outlaws and pushed off the stage. That was around this time, and then they beat the Outlaws at WrestleMania for the titles. So to see those 2 guys go at it at the beginning of the Rumble, and then to have Mankind come in and do his shtick, and then Dude Love come in, like you mentioned, be one of the final 4 in the Rumble. I want to make this point because you almost made it for me. You just I'm gonna close it up for you. Seeing Bret and Austin in the 97 Rumble, you said that that propelled them. That's the word. Propelled them onto the WrestleMania match and their big feud. Well, they had their match at Survivor Series 96 that really started it, but this really took it into stardom.
Right.
And back, I don't know, I haven't paid attention as closely nowadays if they do this, but used to, the 2 guys, or at least last 4 guys or whatever that were left in the Rumble, that's who you were strapping the rocket to for the year. So 95 was Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog. Okay. Shawn Michaels main event in WrestleMania, and he became the biggest babyface in the company. 96 was Shawn and Diesel. Okay. 96 was obviously Shawn's year with his first world title reign. Diesel probably would have had a big year had he not left. 97, Bret and Austin. 98, Austin and Rock. Guess who main evented WrestleMania the next year? I'm just saying, so that was WWE's way of really establishing who the guy was going to be. You know what I mean? So kudos to WWE for that creative and for 3 faces of Foley for sure.
Well, I think obviously they've kind of done that more recently because I want to say other than this past year, the last 3 or 4 Rumbles, Roman Reigns has been final 2 each time. And he's obviously been in the main event of WrestleMania every year except for 35, which was the triple threat between Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte. But they kind of been using that for him. I'm trying to think if they've done anything else like that, because Shinsuke eliminated Roman to win. Randy eliminated Roman to win.
Roman was not in the top 5 or top 3 the year going into WrestleMania 32, because that's when he was the champion and the title was on the line. He was in the top three though, I think, wasn't it? Ambrose, Triple H, and Roman?
He was in the final four.
Final four,
because Triple H eliminated him, Ambrose eliminated Sheamus. I think Sheamus was in it, and then Triple H eliminated Ambrose. to win it. Right. But like WrestleMania
technicality, right?
But when Drew won the Rumble, he eliminated Roman Reigns last as well. So like Roman is definitely following kind of that that trend. But yeah, it's a smart way to kind of let them go through the Rumble, see what they're capable of, kind of see what they're doing that you can build towards for WrestleMania that next year, right. As well. Which I always love the elimination, like people getting eliminated leading to WrestleMania feuds. Obviously, you kind of have seen some of this with Bret Hart and with Stone Cold. You also saw this a couple years ago with Roman Reigns and The Undertaker. You saw it with kind of, in a way, Goldberg and Brock.
Yep.
A couple years ago, and then Taker eliminated Goldberg, which kind of led to their amazing match at Saudi Arabia that nobody wants to talk about. And so, but it's really interesting, like how you kind of see these trends throughout the Rumble each and every year. But going back to the three Faces of Foley, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it was a very smart idea for them to do that. Especially, it's a lot better to do it that way than what we've kind of seen WWE do over the last couple of years of their longer the guys that stay in for longer normally get put through a table and then they're out for a while. This is a great way to kind of do that in a different way, which I think worked really, really well. So then we're moving on to the 1999 Royal Rumble. He was not in the Rumble match, but he was defending the WWF Championship against The Rock in an I Quit match that is still to this day extremely hard to watch. And that's coming from a guy that loves death matches and hardcore matches and everything. This was very difficult to watch. Not even just for the unlimited amount of unprotected headshots that he took, but he took a lot of nasty bumps in this match. And I'm still to this day, I still say he is the best seller when he gets thrown into the ring steps and he just kind of throws his body into it and gets flipped over by it. Kind of what do you remember about this match? Obviously, technically The Rock won. Mick Foley never said I quit because it was the recording and all of that other stuff that kind of went on. But what do you remember about this match? Kind of going back and watching it, but watching it when it happened.
Oh my gosh. Like you said, it's one of the hardest matches to watch. To me, it gets harder every time I watch it. Like I rarely go back and watch this match because it is hard to watch. But if you think the match is hard to watch, I recommend going and watching the movie called Beyond the Mat that was produced around this time. It was a movie that was really one of the first behind-the-scenes look that we got in the WWF, aside from the Wrestling with Shadows Bret Hart documentary that was filmed in '97. So if you go watch Beyond the Mat, Mick Foley is the focus of that movie. And they go behind the scenes of this match in particular. So you see Foley throughout the day with his family and everything. You see the match. You see his family sitting front row during this match while he is getting beaten senseless. And they get up and leave in the middle of the match. And then you see Foley after the match. And it's just one of those things where you can see the realism of what he just did and how it affects the people around him. So to me, that is just as heartbreaking to watch that, to know that for all of you people who out there who believe the narrative that wrestlers are superheroes and they don't have lives outside of wrestling, Beyond the Mat's for you, because you'll see how, I mean, this was a violent match, don't get me wrong, but how these things can affect families and children and that kind of thing. So to me, that's just as heartbreaking as the match itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I forget because obviously I think the handcuff spot and some of the chair shots had to have been somewhat planned.
Yes.
But I don't think it was that many. I don't think it was supposed to be that many.
I think Foley says it somewhere, maybe in one of his books or something, where he has said, I couldn't tell Rock to stop. Like I had no way of telling him to stop.
Yeah.
And he just kept going. And that's not the Rock's fault. It's just, that's the way the match was going, adrenaline, yada, yada, yada. And not all of those were planned.
No. And I mean, Foley took 90% of the offense in this match as well, which is, I mean, a typical Mick Foley style match. He is the one that gets a lot of the punishment because that's just his character, who he is. The obviously the table spot when Rock pushes him from the kind of the first bowl area through the electrical stuff was brutal. The DDT on the floor, all of the chair shots, all everything that he kind of took definitely took a toll on him. And obviously we kind of see some of the effects of that still today. I mean, the guy's career was cut way short because of a lot of these injuries and stuff that he has faced and gone through. Obviously this was kind of the title change, the screwy finish, all of that stuff that kind of took place. What was your reaction? Because obviously Foley won the title. Don't remember exactly when.
He won it. So let me see if I can remember the timeline here. So Rock wins the title after it's vacated from Austin. He wins it at the 98 Survivor Series against Foley. He puts Foley in a sharpshooter, and McMahon calls for the bell, just like he did with Shawn and Bret. We did it to Foley. So Rock wins it that way, turns heel. Foley wins it on Monday Night Raw. I'm pretty sure Austin comes back, and it's the infamous Tony Schiavone revealing that Foley's going to win the title. That should, and then everybody changes
the channel to watch it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that happened in early January of '99, and then this match happens at the Rumble, and then after this, they face in an empty arena match at halftime of the Super Bowl that year, and Foley wins the title back from Rock. So this is in the era where they're tossing the title around. If it's not on Austin, we're going to put it on 4 guys every month and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was definitely during that time period. So obviously you kind of talked about the emotional trauma, not trauma, but a lot of the emotional stuff that the family went through and all the stuff that Mick kind of went through. But what do you remember, other than the chair shots, like what do you remember you feeling watching this kind of when it was happening? Or what do you remember feeling as this match was taking place? Maybe the finish or the chair shots or all of it. Kind of what do you remember?
I remember, obviously, like you, I was enamored, not as much now, but in my younger wrestling days, enamored with hardcore matches because it's something different. You know, everybody wants to see it. But I can honestly remember because I'm a Rock fan. I'm a fan of both of these guys. No matter if Rock was a babyface or a heel, I always liked Rock. But I remember watching this match and thinking, okay, I think he's made his point. Like he's hit him with a chair, and that's 1999. So I was 10 years old at the time.
Right.
So no inside baseball knowledge or anything like that. But that's me just being like, okay, all right, he's made his point. Now what's going to happen? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you watch this, even watching, I don't remember if I watched this live or not, but you got to think watching it, and how does a man come back from this? Even Mick Foley, you know what I mean? Yes, he's been thrown off Hell in a Cell. He's been thrown through Hell in a Cell, yada, yada, yada. But how does Mick Foley come back from being handcuffed, getting blasted with a chair numerous times? Like my feeling in this whole thing was like, okay, it was legit. He's done. Let's stop. Let's move on.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, unfortunately for Foley, it does not end at the 1999 Rumble, because in 2000 Rumble, he is facing Triple H in a very memorable, very chaotic match. I don't remember the exact stipulation. I think it was it just a no DQ, or was it?
It was just a street fight.
Street fight. Okay.
Some sort of New York street fight or something or other.
And it was very brutal to watch. Obviously, you had all the thumbtack spots and the pedigree into the thumbtacks and everything that kind of took place there. What do you remember about this match? What do you remember or recall about this specific bout between Triple H and Mankind?
Oh my gosh. Number one, I'm just going to say next to the Edge match at WrestleMania 22, I want to say.
I think it's 20.
It's either 22 or 23, one of the two.
It's the one in Canada?
No,
no, it's the one in. It's the one with all the rafters in the
Chicago, I think. Maybe Chicago. Anyway, beside the point. It was not at Ford Field. That was 23. That was Detroit. So it had to have been 22. Because 21 was the first Money in the Bank ladder match that Edge won. Anyway, beside the point. 22. Edge and Foley. That WrestleMania match is probably my favorite Foley match. But this Triple H match is right underneath it. I mean, holy cow. And I'm such a big Triple H fan too. I think that's one of the reasons I love this match. But these two guys just beat the tar out of each other. And it's great. And it's the beginning of this feud between Triple H and Mankind again, because Triple H and Mankind feuded in 97 for a little while, in 98 for a little while. Again, one of those opponents that Foley went back to throughout his career and always had great matches with. And this was nothing short of that. But this match in particular, man, I don't know why I'm so drawn to this match. I really don't. It's just, I think it was just two guys. This match really established Triple H. Yeah, I'll say that as the guy, you know. I love this match. No reason in particular. I just do.
Yeah, it was, it's definitely one of those, it's a car crash type of match that you just can't look away from.
Yep.
And it's that old school, you know, violence that they don't really do as much anymore, which is a lot of fun. Obviously, both guys are known for bleeding, and both guys are known for busting open and all of that fun stuff. Kind of, because this match obviously took place in 2000, and I've seen it several times, and it's one of, like you said, it's probably my second favorite Mick Foley match as well, because the Edge match at WrestleMania is just unbelievably brilliant and painful. And I love hearing, I think it was Inside the Ropes, is Edge was doing an interview with them, and he said, as I was going to hit the spear, I realized then my face is going to be full of fire. So I was like, I'm just tucking my face in Mick's belly and rolling through it. And so that's just, anyways, all of that's ridiculous. But you had the infamous spot here with the thumbtacks and the pedigree onto the thumbtacks, which obviously Triple H's knees are going to be, the thumbtacks are going to be going in his knees, but more importantly, it's going to be going in Mankind's face. Kind of, you know, walk us through what you thought about this. Obviously, this was like, while they did do a lot of hardcore stuff, Mick Foley was the hardcore guy. Mick Foley was the guy that was basically, he was what John Moxley kind of is in AEW in a lot of ways, of doesn't really care about his body, doesn't really care about your body. He's going to do whatever he wants to do style. Right. And so that obviously that garners a lot of respect, because yes, I'll let you hit me in the face with barbed wire if you let me put you through thumbtacks on your face. So like, I'll work with you that way. You know, it's not working like with New Jack, who's just going to try to kill me the entire match, but we're going to work together. But like, what did you think about this? Obviously, I can't really remember another time where thumbtacks were used in this way. I mean, they were used before, but not like this, to this extent. And I think they've only been used a couple of other times in WWE. Obviously, you had the Ambrose Jericho match that brought them back. But other than that, I can't really remember too fondly. It wasn't used a whole lot, basically. Right. In WWE,
especially if it didn't involve Foley. Because Foley used them in the Hell in a Cell with The Undertaker. Yeah. Foley used them with Edge at WrestleMania. Yep. Foley used them in a street fight. Maybe it was an I Quit match against Randy Orton in 2004.
I do remember. Yep, I remember that.
I'm pretty sure he used them in a street fight against Ric Flair at SummerSlam too.
Probably.
And I think that was 05, 06, maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, pretty sure Ric Flair got thrown through thumbtacks too. But that's wild. But outside of Foley, Ambrose and Jericho is the only time I can really think of that they've used thumbtacks. I'm sure there's other times. Hit us up on social media at PPW Podcast and remind us, because we obviously didn't come prepared. But having said that, there's a great Untold special on WWE Network on Peacock. For those of you who have not dove into those Untold specials, do yourself a favor and do it, because it's incredible stuff. some really good episodes. But there's one about Triple H and Mick Foley's rivalry because it extends past this match, but it covers this match in detail. And Foley talks specifically about that pedigree spot in the special, and he says, and I quote, "I could lose an eye, but what a pop it's going to be." That's Mick Foley. He was like, well, the thumbtacks.
Oh my gosh.
And we don't see, no matter who it is,
right.
AEW, WWE, whatever, we don't really see face bumps in thumbtacks. They're back bumps. Foley's like, you know what? Whatever. I'll do it face first.
The only one I can remember recently is when the Bucks put the tacks on their shoe and they did the super kick. Yes. But even still, that's like your chin area. It's not like your eyes and stuff.
You can aim that.
Yeah. You can hit here, and it hurts, obviously. I mean, they're thumbtacks, but it's not like taking a pedigree to the face.
And he hit a guy, and they hit a guy with a mask. So you can aim it at a mask. This is Foley, like he dumps the thumbtacks, and they're like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Triple H can't really protect him either.
No.
So,
and obviously Foley had the the Mankind mask, but it only covered it left this part of his face very open still, to where he could eat it and be fine, and not be fine, but he could eat it and it would leave a lot of damage. But it's a ridiculous spot.
Yep.
But it's a spot, and that's kind of the things that Foley was good at. He wasn't necessarily the best wrestler, from bell to bell, but he did the things that you remember.
Yep.
The Hell in a Cell being thrown off the cage. This spot right here with the thumbtacks being speared through a flaming table at WrestleMania. All the stuff with barbed wire that he went through in ECW, and all this other stupid stuff that he did, all of his death matches, everything. So you don't remember the matches necessarily as much as you do the spots. And I think that's a great way to kind of define Mick Foley.
Sure.
Which is not a bad thing. I mean, that's a great thing. Obviously, your Kenny Omegas and your Seth Rollins and your Okadas are going to be remembered for their wrestling ability. But you also have your John Moxleys and your New Jacks and your Mick Foleys that are remembered for literally doing whatever they wanted to do to their body for the sake of entertainment. And that quote that you just read perfectly describes it.
Yep, it really does. And before we move on from this match, I want to give kudos to Triple H when we're talking about violence and we're talking about taking bumps and all that.
Yep.
The dude took a suplex on a broken pallet and had a shard of wood, not just like a shard of wood, like a humongous shard of wood jammed in his leg.
Yep.
So if you watch the match and he pulls it out, how much blood just gushes out of his leg. Just another example of Triple H finishing a match, torn quad, shard in his leg, whatever. Triple H finishes the match. Or as we've seen in 2018, I know we don't want to remember it, but torn pec at Crown Jewel. Yeah. The dude is tough as nails, and I think a lot of people hate on him before they remember that how much he does go through.
Absolutely. To me, he is one of the toughest wrestlers of all time, just because of the fact that I think it was the match where he tore both quads. He did it in like the first 10, 15 minutes of the match or something. And it was like a 35-minute match, and he wrestled the whole thing. And it's like, I twist my ankle walking up the stairs, and I'm out for like a week, and you're doing that. So that's definitely kudos to him. And obviously it was a perfect storm this match was, and facing each other and all of that. And it was just, it's very memorable, and it's if you haven't seen the match, definitely go check it out. If you haven't seen it in a while, go back and watch it again. It's definitely worth the watch of seeing that again. Anything else that you wanted to cover during this time period of the Rumble for Mick Foley as his kind of rise in WWF, WWE?
I think this proves right here, and this proves that Mick Foley is one of the most underrated wrestlers in WWF history. Yep. He may have had limitations as far as movements and move sets and yada yada yada, but he would do anything that you asked him to do to the best of his ability, and then some. So kudos to Mick Foley for what he gave the WWE universe and to his wrestling career, because in my opinion, without this WWF run that he had, if he hadn't ever gone to WWF, the dude would have been a Hall of Famer anyway. Maybe not in the
Right.
WWE Hall of Fame, but he would have been a Hall of Famer anyway. But then to bring a lot of people on the independents that do this kind of stuff, yes, I mean hardcore stuff and this car crash type stuff, a lot of people try to bring it to WWE and it doesn't translate. John Moxley, for example. Nick Gage couldn't get anywhere near the WWE.
Nope.
It's not going to translate. It's not going to work. But for Foley to come in, adapt his style, get in the good graces of WWE, and then say, oh, by the way, I think this feud should end in a car crash match. Well, here we go. You know what I mean? So kudos to Mick Foley for what he did. And this was his pretty sure only Rumble appearances. He may have wrestled a couple of times later, but I don't think so. So these 4 Royal Rumble appearances, I think it's just a unique way for us to cover the Royal Rumble. As we're in Royal Rumble season, to look at somebody who made a huge stamp on the Royal Rumble that not a lot of people remember.
Yeah, I think he made a surprise entrant couple years ago.
1 year
in the Rumble.
I think he did a surprise. You're right.
But other than that, because he did the whole Sacco versus Cobra thing with Santino.
That's right.
In the ring, which got a massive pop. But other than that, obviously this was kind of his Rumble stint right here was these 4 years. And kind of going back to what you were talking about, of they definitely tried to make Ambrose the Mick Foley of that generation in a lot of ways. But the only, I don't want to say downfall, but the only reason why it did not work is because of the whole PG thing. And I think that plays a part of he wasn't able to do the things that Foley was able to do because of that hindrance, which granted, it's WWE during that time. You kind of have to find a way to adapt. And I think he did the best that he could with the situations that he was given. But, Mick Foley never carried around a hot dog cart with mustard and ketchup and used it as weapons, but
well, that's true too. And I think what hindered Moxley, or Ambrose as he was known in the WWE, what hindered him in the PG era was that his character, what he knew as a character, and this is not trying to go down a huge rabbit hole, but his character was based on the hardcore stuff. We see that in AEW. His character is just based on beating people up, not caring what he does to his body. He's just that kind of guy. Whereas Foley was able to introduce himself as a totally different character and totally do something that was just deranged, as they overused the word at that time, and then morph into, because everybody knew about Cactus Jack before he got to the WWE. Right. So when he was able to bring Cactus Jack in, that made it even more special. And then Dude Love as well, the way Mick was able to transition between the three, and as we saw in the 98 Rumble, play a different character in the, in the same match, 3 different guys, and adapt his style. Just kudos to Foley, man. For those of you who want to hear more about Foley in this whole kind of situation, I am going to, as you're listening to this right now, upload it on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel. You will find Jared and my dad and I did a series of episodes about the A&E biographies that came out. We did 2 parts, and Mick Foley is covered in one of those parts. So I'm going to get that uploaded. That way you guys can go specifically check that out, because we talk a lot of good stuff about Mick Foley there as well. A lot of stuff that we aren't able to get to when we're just covering the Royal Rumble stuff. But for a deeper dive into Mick Foley, I'm going to upload that. So that'll be ready to go as you guys are listening to this. So go check it out.
Yeah, definitely go check that out. Definitely go back and look at this run of Foley through these 4 Royal Rumbles. It's definitely something that
I can't recommend the Triple H match enough. If you can stomach the Rock match, then you need to watch it too. Yeah,
absolutely. I think you need to go back and watch those. Go back and watch the 98 Rumble as well, to see the 3 Faces of Foley and to see all of that funness that was taking place during that time as well.
Can I tell a quick story before we sign off?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna try to fit this in when we were talking about the 97 Rumble, but it didn't come up. This has nothing to do with Mick Foley, but I'm gonna tell the story anyway. So the 97 Royal Rumble was in San Antonio, Texas, and we know that at the time business was down a little bit. This is definitely a rabbit hole, so just sit back and put your seatbelt on. business was down at the time, but WWE decided to run the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas, because it was going to be the homecoming for Shawn Michaels. So this is all from the Bruce Pritchard Something to Wrestle With podcast. I'm not just making this stuff up, so I'm totally ripping this off from him. This is from the 97 Royal Rumble episode. So in order to get more people in the building, because it was like a 60-something thousand seat building or whatever, they were handing out a lot of comp tickets. They were handing out a lot of very, very discounted tickets. And a lot of stuff like that. Well, one of the other things that they tried to do to help draw attention in, if you watch the 97 Royal Rumble, you will notice that there's a lot of AAA wrestlers in the 97 Royal Rumble, a lot of masked guys. They brought a lot of guys in from Mexico to try to bring that crowd into the Alamo Dome. Well, one of the guys that they brought into the show was Mil Mascaras. Now, Mil Mascaras is a AAA legend. He's a legend throughout the history of Mexican wrestling. But as you know, a lot of those Mexican wrestlers, they're never seen without their mask. It's like a disgrace if they're seen without their mask. So Mil Mascaras comes in, and this is all out of the mouth of Bruce Pritchard. He's talking through creative with these guys, and he tells Mascaras who's going to eliminate him in the match. And Mascaras responds with Noyab. And Bruce says, what? And he says, Noyab. Well, eventually he got somebody to translate through this conversation. Mascaras didn't want to do the job in the Royal Rumble. It's not that he necessarily wanted to win it, but he didn't want to do the job in the Rumble. So Noyab is sort of a catchphrase that happens on Something to Wrestle With if you're a regular listener of that show. But that's where this comes from, is Mascaras didn't want to do the job. So if you watch the Royal Rumble and Mascaras, when he gets in the ring, he eliminates himself so that nobody else throws him over the top rope. He gets on the top rope and does a dive to the outside on top of somebody and therefore is eliminated.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
that is the most 90s wrestling thing I've ever heard in my life.
Isn't it?
Jeez.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I had to get that story. And I thought that anytime that I go back to the 97 Royal Rumble, that's one of the things I immediately think of now. Noyab.
What? When did he come out? What number was he?
He's in the top. He's definitely in the top 15. I want to say he was like, it's pretty early on. It's at one of those times where the ring gets crowded in between Austin chucking people out. I don't think it's after Bret, but it might be after Bret. I don't remember exactly when Bret comes in.
Okay. I'll have to go back and watch that now.
Go check it out. It's so good.
That is ridiculous.
It's so good. Somebody gets thrown out, and then he gets on the top rope, and he dives on top of him, and then he tries to get back in the ring, and the referees are like, no. And the commentators are like, I think Mil doesn't understand the rules of the Royal Rumble. It's like, okay. You think?
Reminds me, I think the Great Khali did that one time.
He did.
Where he climbed over the top rope and eliminated himself, then got back in the ring, and then somebody eliminated him again or whatever. But
yep. I think you're right.
Oh my gosh.
Was that in? I don't remember when that was. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
No. Because 2010 is when Beth Phoenix eliminated him.
Yes.
Because that was Punk's whole Sermon on the Mount Rumble. That was absolutely amazing when he kept eliminating people and then cutting promos in the match. That was great. That was great.
Oh, that's so funny.
All right, well, I think that's going to do it after, that story. I think it's a great place to call the podcast. Anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up and call it a show?
No, man. Just like Mick Foley is so stinking underrated. Like when we pick topics for this podcast, we don't just pull stuff out of thin air because, that'll be a fun podcast. No, like we cover stuff that we want to talk about and that we think is good quality stuff. So just like before Christmas, we covered Bret Hart in the WCW. Nobody's really going to turn a head at that. But when you really dive into it, it's really, really interesting stuff. Same thing with Mick Foley, man. I know a lot of people like Mick Foley, but I don't think they realize the importance of his appearances at these 4 Royal Rumbles. And Foley talks about it in that Untold special about how Austin was hurt. They weren't sure when he was going to come back, and they kept coming to him and saying, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? So Foley was just there and willing, man, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
No, he really doesn't, and he even then he's always been a fan favorite, and it's great to kind of see him get the respect that he kind of deserves, and it's always fun to go back and watch his stuff and talk about all the craziness that man has done in his career, and who knows, he may show back up again and do something else crazy in the future.
Of course he will.
Because money definitely talks. I'm surprised he hasn't done a Saudi show yet, but that's still up for debate at some point.
As long as he doesn't wrestle the Undertaker
in a Hell in a Cell match. There you go, right there. They're going to recreate it. And then that's not
as Jim Ross said, Foley really would be broken in half. Legit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He definitely would be. He definitely would be. Sure. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast. This Monday edition, this old school edition. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us and listening to us each and every episode. We love to come together and talk about the current stuff, as well as going back through history and looking at some of this old school stuff as well. It's a lot of fun to learn and to grow and to, advance our wrestling knowledge together. It's a whole lot of fun to go down this. So we appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us each and every week. Make sure you go on over to bodyslam.net and subscribe to their YouTube channel, where you can see the lovely video version of this podcast, as well as all of our other podcast episodes as well. Go to sportswire.com to find all of our other, to listen to our podcast as well. We appreciate them and all of their fantastic shows over there as well. So go check them out. And you can also find us on Anchor, on Spotify, on Google Play, on Apple Music, on Apple Podcasts. Basically, anywhere you find your podcast, you can find the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast there as well. So go give us a listen, a 5-star review, leave a review, do all of that stuff as well, so that we can grow and reach more ears and grow this community together. Because this is by fans for fans. We want to reach as many fans as we can to spread the love of wrestling around. So we definitely appreciate you guys doing that as well. Make sure you go over to Twitter to follow us, the podcast there. It's at PBW Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy_PBWP. And you can follow Chris on Twitter at ChrisBelter24. Make sure you go over there and do all of that as well. But for Chris, my name is Andy. We appreciate you tuning in and listening to us. And we'll catch you guys down the road.